The Taganrozhets is a typical example of the Soviet simplicity and minimalism. Even today, the Russians themselves consider it one of the ugliest vehicles ever created in the Soviet Union. However, this forgotten project is much more interesting than it may seem at first glance. As a kid, I found a drawing of this strange machine in my grandpa's old books. At that time, I had no clue what this weird thing was. Many years later, I came across it again while surfing the internet. Taganrozhets is not an ordinary farming transporter or some kind of off-road truck. Even though it might not seem like it, this vehicle is actually more similar to a combine harvester than a truck. And it shouldn't be surprising because it was designed by Kanan Ilyich Isakson, the legendary Soviet combine designer, the creator of such machines like iconic Niva or SK6 Kolos. In fact, today, we would call the Taganrozhets a self-propelled tool carrier. It was intended to be a universal tool platform that could be used all year round, both as an agricultural tractor in the field or for transport, as well as a grain, potato, or beet harvester. My name is Matheo. Welcome to my channel. I'm a farmer and tractor enthusiast from Poland. In today's episode, I want to tell you the story of the SSH-75 tool carrier, also known as Taganrozhets. If you like my videos, please be sure to leave a thumb up and subscribe to my channel in order not to miss any of my new videos. I also invite you to follow me on TikTok and Instagram and join our Facebook group Matheo Machinery. And now, let's jump into the story. Let's start from the very beginning. In the 1950s and 1960s, farm equipment producers in Europe started thinking about whether it made sense to have separate, self-propelled machines like combine harvesters. Many designers believed that creating very expensive self-propelled harvesters that work only 1 or 2 months a year and stand idle the rest of the year makes no sense. It was then when in Germany, all kinds of projects of tool carriers such as Class Huckepack or Lanz Alldog and similar triumphed. A similar trend also appeared later overseas, in America and Canada. As time has shown, this idea was ultimately not well received on the market, and in fact has not survived to this day. There are some producers like, for example, Class with their Zerion or Homer with their Terra variant still rely on this concept nowadays, but this is rather rare. But let's go back to the 1950s. At that time, Soviet engineers commonly traveled west, observing various technical solutions from Western machines in order to implement them in their designs. Such expeditions are mentioned by Yuri Peskov, the longtime general director of Rostselmash, who personally visited the CLR's factory in Harsewinkel and imported John Deere combine harvesters to carefully examine them. This is just my guess, but maybe during one of those trips, someone saw a tool carrier. I think the Class Huckepack from 1956 fits this idea well, but I'm just speculating. In the early 1960s, the Central Committee decided to make their own all-purpose tool carrier. This task was given to the legendary Soviet engineer of Jewish origin, Kanan Ilyich Isakson, creator of such legendary combines as the SK5 Niva and the SK6 Kolos. For his achievements, he received the Lenin Prize, which was one of the top honors in the USSR for engineering, architecture, and science. At that time, Isakson led the design team at the Taganrog combine plant in Taganrog by the Sea of Azov. Taganrog is a mid-sized port town, situated around 50 kilometers straight from Rostov-on-Don, famous for making Rostselmash combines. I brought up Rostov for a reason. The well-known Niva was made there, but the slightly less famous Kolos was produced in the smaller factory in Taganrog. And that's where the SSH-75 Taganrozhets was to be built. The machine went into production in 1965. The tool carrier was equipped with a 4-cylinder liquid-cooled SMD-14B diesel engine generating 75 horsepower. Today it may not seem like much, but back then it was quite a lot of power, especially compared to a Class Huckepack. The drive was transferred only to one axle with larger wheels, and the transmission implemented in the carrier offered 12 forward and 4 reverse gears, plus a 2-stage reducer. Thanks to this, the machine could reach a maximum speed of 30 km per hour. The Taganrozhets inherited many elements from the combines produced in the factory, but its design also included many parts unified with the MTZ DT75, T40 and T150K tractors. Surprisingly at first, the Taganrozhets didn't have a cabin, but it was quickly implemented and even had heating. The steering system also had a basic form of power assistance. Overall, as you can see, the Taganrozhets had the typical look and feel of Soviet machinery, but no matter what others might think, I personally find this vehicle so uniquely ugly that it's beautiful and one of a kind in its own way. However, the key feature of the Taganrozhets design was its modularity. The whole cabin with the engine and gearbox could be turned 180 degrees based on how the carrier was meant to be used. And of course, unlike Bima or Zerion, with the Taganrozhets, you had to do it by hands, which took some time and effort. But it was the 1960s and the Soviet Union, so that shouldn't be surprising to anyone. A number of modules were also designed for Taganrozhets. Although I couldn't find all the photos, According to the sources they were combine harvester, beet harvester, three-furrow plow, seeder, potato harvester, corn chopper, sprayer, fertilizer spreader, manure spreader, dump truck, volume trailer, or even an excavator. It's a shame that there aren't many surviving photos of Taganrozhets. In general, it appears that, for some reason, despite their versatility, most of these carriers were mainly used for transportation, like dump trucks. The modules were driven by a power takeoff shaft and transmission belts, and there were also 3 pairs of hydraulic outputs. There was also a special prototype version equipped with 4 tracks and adapted to work in wet conditions, e.g. in rice fields or peat bogs, but it never entered series production. The production of the Taganrozhets lasted a total of 7 years. During this time, exactly 20,714 units of this unusual vehicle were produced in Taganrog. It may seem like a lot, but by the standards of the Soviet Union, it was a drop in the ocean of needs, and not a huge number at all. Even though more than 20,000 of them were made, only a small number have lasted to these days. There are some places in Russia where these machines are still in use, but the majority of them, which worked hard in the collective farms, were unfortunately scrapped. On the secondary market, Taganrozhets can sometimes be found in Russia for the equivalent of $3,000 to $5,000, but it seems that they are not very popular. It's difficult to say why this project was dropped. There were follow-up developments to the Taganrozhets like the SSH-40, SSH-75, SSH-100, and SSH-150. However, these projects never advanced beyond the prototype stage and are now just interesting curiosities. I think the reason for this is the same as for other similar projects of this kind. In the end, as we know now, specialized self-propelled machines won, and universal tool carriers were basically left behind. In 1997, the factory in Taganrog was transformed into a car factory where the production of licensed passenger cars from China and South Korea began under the Doninvest and Tagazi brands. The factory closed down in 2014, but in 2022, there were rumors that Rostelmash from Rostov was going to take over and produce additional machines there to help the Rostov-on-Don plant. However, I'm not sure if the deal happened and what's currently going on at the Taganrog factory. The designer of the Taganrozhets died in 1985 at the age of 76. He was buried in the Honorary Walk of Fame of the Distinguished at the Nikolaevsky Cemetery in Taganrog. It looks like this video is the first exploration of the Taganrozhets on the English-speaking part of the internet, so I'm really happy that I can be the first to share the history of this unique vehicle with you. I also invite you to join our Facebook group, Matheo Machinery, for more interesting content from the world of tractors and heavy equipment. You can also follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. All the links are in the description below. And now thank you for watching and see you next time.